My name's Megan, and today we are with Clementine, and I'm a knitter and music teacher and now podcaster based out of Southern Alberta in Canada, and I'm coming to you with episode 2 of my Hey Mom podcast. And if you didn't see my last one, I also have 2 wonderful kitties. This is Clementine, and she hates being held this way, but she kind of freezes. You can see her little feet. And the other cat is Bonnie, and she's about half Clementine's weight, but she makes up for it with her immense amount of fluff. Anyways, welcome to episode 2 of the Hey Mom podcast. I started this podcast as a way of sharing my knits with the wonderful knitting community, and I was totally blown away. Thank you to everyone who watched my last podcast. Thank you to everyone who left comments. One of the things that I love most about this community is how positive it is, how encouraging it is. And I've always felt that on Instagram, but I felt it even more so on YouTube. And so I was just astonished. It was beautiful. And thank you for all of the beautiful comments that you left. I've read almost all of them, I think now. I've still got a little bit of catching up to do, but if you have any thoughts or suggestions or anything like that, feel free to leave them in the comments down below. And if you have any questions about any of the patterns or any of the yarns, I'm really good about linking the patterns. The yarns, I'll do my best, especially when it's an indie dyer, I'll do my best to link the yarns. And so that's all going to be in the description box below. And I just hear the cats fighting upstairs. Bonnie just doesn't like it when Clementine gets too close too fast. Anywho, back to what I was saying. If you have any questions, feel free to leave comments, or if you just have something that you want to share. I did have one wonderful comment, or maybe it was an Instagram message, who said, turn off the ads. I've tried. And until I am able to monetize the channel, I don't think I'm able to turn off the ads. If anybody has any suggestions or any YouTube tutorials or anything like that, I tried to do my research. I tried on my phone on YouTube Studio, and I also tried on my laptop in YouTube Studio, and I could not figure out how to turn them off unless my channel was already monetized. So if you have any suggestions towards that, I would love to turn them off until that money can be coming back to me instead of just going back to Google, but I couldn't figure it out. So welcome. I am trying a little bit of a different setup. I've got this beautiful antique piano stool, and then I've got a couch just right next to me. It's usually over against that wall, but I slid it on over to be my table because I've got a lot to talk about today. This podcast, I have a hunch, is going to be a lot longer than the last one, because not only do I want to talk to you about my knits, but I want to talk to you about 2 different adventures. I haven't done this yet, but I'm hoping that I was able to include a little snippet of a spring crocus that I saw. It was in a coulee walk that I did about a month ago, but it was the walk that, I didn't listen to music. It was about an 8-kilometer hike in the coulees. It took me an hour and 45 minutes, about an hour and a half. And on that walk, I didn't listen to my music. I didn't listen to podcasts. I just listened to myself and my thoughts and nature. And it was wonderful. And that was the day and the walk that I was like, hey, I think I'm going to do it. I think I'm going to do a knitting podcast. And I think I want to make that knitting podcast a bit of a conversation with my mom. So if you haven't gone back and watched the first podcast, maybe I didn't describe it super well. I'll describe it again. I lost my mom in February of this year, and I'm 29. My mom was 68, and she died of neuroendocrine tumor syndrome, which is an uncommon cancer, but since I've kind of talked to some doctors just that I know personally, I hear that it's becoming more common. So it was called neuroendocrine tumor syndrome, and she lived with it for 9 years. Her name was Kathy, and she was a really, really fun lady. And she was a crafter, not so much a knitter. She really enjoyed crocheting. Sorry, I'm just making sure Clementine doesn't knock anything down. she really enjoyed all of these crafts. I'll be right back. Just gonna move something. Okay, there we go. So anyways, she really enjoyed crafting of all sorts. She did a diploma in fashion management when she was in college, and it was just always a really big passion for her. I've got dresses that she made that conveniently enough fit me because we're the same stature. And so yeah, it's just always been a really strong connection that my mom and I have had. My sewing machine is an old sewing machine of hers. And when I got really into knitting, every time Mom and I would talk on the phone, we would talk on the phone for hours. We did have a bit of a strained relationship in some ways, but we always had a good relationship in which we communicated and we talked, and she just wanted to know what happened in my life. I'm her only daughter. She has 2 stepdaughters, and then my brother, who is her son. And so we would always talk about crafting, and it would always come down to the conversation after hour and a half. She'd be like, so what are you working on? And so I don't want to stop talking to my mom about what I'm working on. And so I'm going to talk to my mom about it. And I'm also going to talk to all of you about it because you have all been delightful. So 10 minutes in, this is my Hey Mom, here's what I'm working on podcast. My name's Megan. I go by Cottonwoods. I am not going to do that big spiel every time, I promise. And you can find me on Instagram at Cottonwoods. I've been on there for about 2 years, so I've got quite a lot going on, and I like to post in my stories. And here on YouTube, which I believe I go by Cottonwood. Feel free to subscribe if you like what I'm doing. I'm going to try and do this about every week or 2. We're going to see what happens. I'm actually off of work at the moment. I teach here in Southern Alberta, and yeah, I'm off of work. I went back to work right after Mom died, and I was doing pretty good for a long time, and then I was not doing pretty good. So I'm off of work, so I've got a lot of time on my hands, and that is very reflective in what I'm knitting. And so when you look at what I'm knitting, don't be like, oh my gosh, how does she get all that knitting time in? A lot of it is because I've been off and I've had a lot of time in my days. And it's a very meditative practice, as I'm sure you all know if you are knitters or crocheters or sewists. And so here's what I'm working on. So to jump right in, I'm wearing my Shift Again today. This is by Andrea Mowry. And this is my main finished object of my last podcast. And I really love, I turned off the lights so we don't have any overhead. This is a little bit earlier in the day, so we should have some good sun. And I love how this color is looking. It's just, I look at it on its own and it's like, doesn't really, it's not super hot. But the second I knit it into a garment, it's like, oh, this is real good. So I'm so happy that I used this. And this is stash yarn. And this is all stash yarn. And most of my Spincycle was actually scraps or Spincycle that I bought for a project, and it just didn't swatch up how I wanted, with the exception of Ghost Ranch. And that was just a skein that I just wanted in my collection. So I just bought it maybe a month before I started this project. And so, yeah, I'll stand up and I can show you. Oh, this is a good frame because you can see. So it's a little crinkled because it's been in my closet, just kind of folded up. So my main color is Kaluna by Brooklyn Tweed. Peerie is the line, which is a fingering to sport weight, and I love how springy it is. It's a gorgeous yarn to work with. Up top, and I'll come in nice and close. Oh, that shows up so good. Here we've got Mississippi Marsala by Spincycle, dyed in the wool. Here we've got Slow Burn, which is also dyed in the wool by Spincycle, but it is, sorry about the focus, but it is the exclusive colorway of Farmer's Daughters Fibers. And then down at the bottom I'll go up on my tippy toes. Down at the bottom, we've got Ghost Ranch. So that's where we started in this like bluey pinky, and then it gets down into the scummy green, and then finishes off with red. And then the Ghost Ranch on the sleeves, I love how it worked up because you got this like yellow. And then I went back into the Mississippi Marsala, and I was just, same thing over here with the blue. I was just so happy with how the transitions went throughout this entire garment, and it was so much fun to knit. I would strongly recommend it. I got gauge using the needle that Andrea Mowry calls for. I added a few extra short rows in the back because I've noticed over a few years of knitting that makes a huge difference for the fit of my sweaters. And I'll turn around. Ooh, benefit of a piano stool, twisty piano stool. You'll see on the back of the cardigan, I really like it because the short rows are included in the ribbing, and I think that's something that I'm going to try on another sweater that might not necessarily call for it. So I really like how that fits, and I really like how that looks as well. That way you don't have this random section of stockinette before your color work starts. It's very nice. Last time I didn't bring water. I knew I needed to bring water this time. So that's my shift again. It was my main finished object last time, but because I'm wearing it, I wanted to share that with you. So there we go. Okay, first real finished object today is my ranunculus. And this is a pattern by Midori Hirose. And I am very happy with how it turned out. I used Rowan Yarns cotton cashmere, which is a DK weight. It ends up feeling a little bit more like a worsted weight. And I'll talk about this a little bit more in a bit, but hide my face, get it to focus. There we go. So I am pretty happy with it. It feels really, really nice. I haven't blocked it yet. And I know this is a 85% cotton, 15% cashmere blend. I know with some other knits, you, like with pure cotton or pure linen, you can just throw it in the washing machine and throw it in the dryer. I don't know if I'm gonna do that with this. If anybody has used Rowan cotton cashmere and has done anything in the dryer or in the washer, let me know. I'm going to I'm just gonna soak it and lay it flat to dry like I normally would. I don't think I need to pin it out at all. I'm really quite happy with the shape. There's a little, you can see a little like sagging, but I think that's gonna work out with blocking just because of the twisted rib, pulls it in nice at the waist. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this on and I will be right back. Okay, hi, I'm back. So this is how it ended up working up, and I ended up being on gauge with the 6mm needles, and I had thought I was going to do the size 2, but once I was doing my raglan increases, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to get more wear out of it if I do it as the size 1. So I ended up doing it as the size 1. For context, I have a 38 to 39-ish inch bust, but the difference of my underbust and my upper bust to my full bust is quite significant. So a lot of the time I end up sizing down one size from what would typically be suggested for my bust size. I just find it's a not scientific system, but it works well for me. So this is the ranunculus, and I am so happy with how it worked up. The other weekend, I went and met some knitty friends in Calgary. I'll share more about that when I talk about acquisitions at the end. And they ended up, I ended up wearing this. I initially had on my shift again, and then I changed into this when Jeffrey and I went and walked around Inglewood, which is a cute little area in Calgary with a bunch of cute little shops. It's where Stash is, if you know Calgary at all. And so anyways, it has proven to be a nice summer garment. It's not kind of as lightweight as I was hoping, but overall, I'm very happy with it. So I'm going to start with the neckline, so I'll stay seated for that. Really happy with how the neckline worked up. I actually ended up, in the pattern, you cast on a certain number of stitches, and then as soon as you're done the ribbing, you go ahead and do an immediate increase round. I didn't want to do the tubular cast on because of like the cotton. I didn't think it would look very good, and I didn't want to try the stretchy bind off or the stretchy cast on that's suggested in the pattern either, because when you put so much work into something, and when it's the cast on for your project, you can't really go back and redo it. So I just didn't want to mess around with that. So I did my German twisted cast on, which is my go-to cast on. I do love a tubular cast on, but just with this content, I didn't think it would work out well. So I initially tried it with the recommended number of stitches, and it was so tight I couldn't get it on. Well, I could, but like it was like scraping my face to get it on over my head, and that was not the fit I wanted. So I actually ended up casting on the number of stitches that it calls for in that immediate increase round, and I'm so happy with the fit. So it's a little bit of an open neckline, which is nice. I did both the short rows in the front as well as in the back. There's more in the back than there is in the front, but I'm really happy with how those short rows work up. It makes it a little bit wide along the shoulders, but not too wide down here so that it looks awkward. I really like that system. I feel it gives it more of a raglan fit, even though it's a circular yoke until like the bottom of the texture. So yeah, I'll stand up and show you where it hits me on the waist. So I'm wearing a very high-waisted pair of mom jeans today. You can see my belly button's right there. So this is above my belly button. Jeans are sitting right at my natural waist. So I really specifically wanted this to show, or to sit right at my waist, because I find that's easiest with either a pair of super high-waisted pants or with a dress. So if I were to wear this to teach, of course I'd wear an undershirt underneath. Right now I'm not too worried about it. So yeah, here's the fit. You can also see kind of like, compared to my back, like a little bit of the positive ease. And I'm really happy with the fit. I would definitely make it in this fit again. Maybe a little bit longer, maybe long sleeved. This is my second ranunculus, but I think it's the only one that I'm really gonna get much wear out of. You can see I didn't do the suggested sleeve for the ranunculus. I set aside the stitches and pick them back up after I knit the body. I'll sit back down because it's having a hard time focusing, doesn't know what to focus on. So I picked them up, knit about 5 rows, and then did 4 rows or something like that of the ribbing. Sorry about that. So did a few rows of ribbing, worked out nicely. Did not do the suggested 4 inches of ribbing at the bottom of the body. I think I ended up with 2.5, 3. I don't know if I have a ruler close. I don't think I do. I think I cleaned up my project bags. Sorry. And I did less ribbing at the bottom, and I'm very happy with how it fits. So that's my ranunculus. And I'm going to change into my next finished object. Alrighty, this is my coloring book tee by Amy Scher, and I made this using Crux Fibers, who is from Brittany. She's an indie dyer from Whitehorse, and she's delightful. If you haven't had the pleasure of seeing her on either YouTube or Instagram yet, or buying any of her yarn, I would strongly recommend it. I'm very happy with how this turned out. I think I need to stop making things in gray. I've got a lot of gray. You can even see up behind me, there's a little bit of gray. But that's okay, because in behind me in my yarn pantry, there is not a ton of gray, so that bodes well. So this is my coloring book raglan, and I'll talk about the few details, but first I want to talk about the yarn. So like I said, this is using Crux Fibers, and oh, here I have a full skein right there. So that is Brittany's company, and she dyes yarn in Whitehorse, which is in the Yukon in northern Canada. I actually got to meet Brittany last summer. Talked about that a bit more on my last episode. And this blend is very interesting. It is 51% baby alpaca, 25% linen, and 24% tussa silk. And so it's not a typical, usually you see like a mulberry silk or something along those lines. That's not what we have here. The tussa silk is a little bit, it has a little bit more oomph to it. It has a little bit more texture to it. So I really like this blend. This has not been wet blocked yet. I'm really excited to wet block it. I did a fast little steam block this morning, and that worked out nice. It's still possibly even a little bit damp, but you can see we've got some kind of like strange puckering in and around the raglans. So we'll do a little bit with that, but I think it'll end up being good. So we have the Crux Fibers, and the main color that I used is called Silver Tip, and the contrast color that I ended up using is called Blush. And I got away with using 2 skeins, so 190 grams of this Silver Tip color, and I'm very happy with how that turned out. And I used about 25 grams of the Blush color, so I'm excited to have a full skein and 75 grams of this in my stash. And I have bought many more colors. Whoops. So she had a big sale and I can't resist a sale. Though I'm trying hard. I'm trying really hard to be okay with if I don't, it's okay for me to want something and not immediately get it because I can't afford it, and that's okay. So into the details of the t-shirt. I made it to essentially to spec, and with the recommended 3/4 length sleeves, and this is like the full body version, even though it's a little bit of a crop. I've got a nice little French tuck moment here, but now you can see the full length of the body. And I think I'm going to get a lot of wear out of this in summer on cooler days. It gets pretty hot here, in spring and fall, and probably in winter too. So I'm really happy with like the nice sweatshirty feel. I made the size C, and just super happy with how it worked out. Yeah, I was debating making the sleeves a little bit longer, but I don't have a lot that's like a true 3/4 length, and it's a really comfortable fit. So I'm very happy with that. I got gauge with the 3.5 for the main body, and the yarn, it's not super thin, but because it's alpaca and linen and silk, it doesn't plump up the same way that wool does. It does soften beautifully though. But anyways, it ends up being a little, like, you can see the light through it, but like I'm not wearing an undershirt and you can't see my bra. At least I can't see my bra. So I'm not too concerned about it. So I'm really happy with the gauge that this knit up at. So I got gauge for pattern, which I think is 24 stitches, and maybe it's 23. I'm not sure. I got gauge. Look at the pattern page. It's linked down below. And 3.5 millimeters, 2.75 for the ribbing. One suggestion that I would make if you end up making this pattern, don't try and bind off with a bigger needle. Just go straight to doing a super stretchy bind off. So on the hem, I ended up doing like a bind off with a 4 millimeter needle, and because of the yarn I was using, it didn't have enough stretch, and you'll see even now, this is with the Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off, and there is no stretch, and that's just because of the fibers, and that is okay. So I ended up ripping it back and doing the Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off, and I'm really happy with the fit of that. It still brings it in a little with the ribbing, but I have lots of positive ease in and around my hips, which is nice. Like I said, I made the size C and I was on gauge. And then I went ahead and did the Jenny's surprisingly stretchy as well on the arm, and that's really comfortable. Some good elasticity, especially considering alpaca, linen, and silk. And then the one kind of modification, but not really, that I made, was that I did a rolled neckline, but it is suggested as an alternative neckline. I like the look of having this area a little bit more open, especially on a summer weight or lightweight garment. I'm really happy with that. So I'm gonna change out of this. It's still a little itchy, but I know that once I wet block it and give it a really good soak, that's gonna change. So I'm gonna take this off. I'm gonna change back into my shift again, and I will see you in a moment to talk about my works in progress. Hi. Okay, we're gonna talk about works in progress, and then I'm actually gonna go and take a little break because I've got a chiropractor appointment in 24 minutes, as my phone has lovingly informed me. Thank goodness for technology and reminders, because I definitely would have forgotten. And that would not be the first time with my chiropractor. Anywho, so I have essentially two whips at the moment, because I finished my coloring book my coloring book tea this morning. Like, wanted to get it done and give it a little steam before I came on. So the coloring book tea I just finished, so I was working on that, and then essentially these two other things. So I had mentioned that I was going to start this last time, and this is my Dahlia Solo by, oh no, I didn't write it down. Whoops, sorry. So I'll link the pattern to Ravelry down below. So this is going to be a cardigan, and it is not going to be a Megan-sized cardigan. It is going to be a 6-year-old sized cardigan for one of my really good friend's daughters, so essentially my niece. And I am loving how this is working up. I motored through the lace because I just love knitting lace. It's very addictive. And I'm so happy with how it turned out. Of course, it's gonna block out quite a bit and just create those beautiful petals that are just so striking. So I'm really loving that. And I am knitting this on a 4mm needle. The pattern called for a 3.5mm needle, but it also called for like a very true DK weight, and I believe 22 stitches. And I know that I get DK weight. DK weight is best for me on a 4mm needle, and I ended up getting gauge with 4mm. I did do a bit of a extra swatch. I didn't bring my swatch down today, but my swatch did end up having, like, I tried it with a 3.75, and then I tried it with a 4, and ended up being happiest with the 4mm. So that's what I cast on with, and I'm so happy with how it's working up. I just separated for the sleeves, and so now I'm just working back and forth on the body. I'm gonna motor through this. Her birthday is on June 4th, and today is May 25th, 26th. Being on leave, I don't know what day it is. So, yeah. Got to start this, and I'm just gonna motor through it and get it done because her birthday is coming up soon. So this color, she loves pink, and I've had this in stash for quite some time because I am a sucker for a sale. And this yarn is by Lillian Pine, and you're gonna hear a little bit more about Lillian Pine today because I love her yarns. They're amazing. And the colorway is called Truly Outrageous. And this is her Birch Sport, which is, I'm just gonna show you the back because it's so much easier than showing you the front of a cardigan. This is a 100% superwash merino yarn. So, and also I know her mom's gonna take good care of it. She values those kind of knits. And so this is 100% superwash merino, and it has such beautiful definition. It is a DK weight. I believe she calls it a sport weight, but I work it up at a DK gauge, no problem. And her skeins of this end up being pretty huge. So they end up being, it's 115 grams but when I weighed both of my skeins, they were actually a little bit closer to 120 to 125 grams, and you get 280 yards on that 115 grams, so it's a pretty true DK weight, and it does bloom quite nicely when you knit it up. So I'm really happy with how this is working up. I'm excited to kind of get going on it and get it blocked and get it ready and pick out some buttons, because that's always fun with a cardigan, and then I know she's just gonna get so much wear out of it. And I picked a cardigan so that she can wear it more as she grows. So I'm making, it's her 6th birthday on June 4th, and she's pretty true to size for a 6-year-old. But a cardigan is nice because as it gets shorter and as the sleeves get shorter, it's not a huge problem. And kids more or less grow up for a long time before they start growing out. So I hope she'll get at least 2 years of wear out of this. And if she can't close it all the way, it's not a big deal. So I'm really excited about this and her being able to wear it, and I think she's just gonna love it. And it's nice and squishy and nice and scrumptious, so yeah. I talked about the yarn, talked about the needle size, talked about the pattern. Everything's gonna be linked below, and let's move on to my next whip. So my next whip is the Old Port Hat by Andrea Mowry, or DRK Drea Renee Knits. And here's where we are. So this is a bit of a funky pattern. It is for the Memorial Day weekend hat challenge. I'm in Canada. It's not Memorial Day weekend here, but Andrea Mowry's running a knit along, so I'm gonna knit along. So you can see here, there's this section down at the bottom, and that is an Alpaca Classic by Rowan. I have no idea what the colorway is. Not a clue. Rowan doesn't do a good job of listing on their labels what the colorways are, but it's like this blushy, kind of dirty-ish pink, and I'm really, really happy with how that's working up. It might be a little bit itchy. This is actually a brim liner that gets folded up on the inside of the hat, so it's gonna be right around here. If it's too itchy, I'll just give it to someone else. It's not a big deal. And so you've got the brim liner down at the bottom that's just in stockinette, and then you can see here that I've gotten into the brioche, and I really like right here because you can see how the brioche is what Andrea Mowry has called syncopated. So here you end up having your contrast yarn is the main color, and then here on what are going to be the little ear flaps, if you've seen a picture of the pattern, the ear flaps end up being in the contrast color, which is the same as the brim, or the brim liner, I should say. So here, I'll show you the yarns. So this is the Alpaca Classic, and calls for a sport weight, and this is pretty close to a sport weight. Yeah, so pretty close to a sport weight. It's got some fluff, good amount of fluff. It is 50-something% alpaca and 40-something% cotton. It's not my favorite to knit with because of that cotton content. There's next to no stretch. So we'll see how I like it, but I'm glad to use this. This is just yarn that I had in stash. Might need to buy a second ball for my local yarn store. If that's the case, then that's the case, and I will do that. So we'll just see how far this gets me, and then if I need to go out, I can go out easy enough. And my contrast color, I'm really loving this one. This is from Sonder Yarn Co., and this is their Sunday morning DK weight, and the colorway is offline. Yes, offline. And these are just my scraps from when I made that shawl right back there with that bright pink. I just love this yarn. It's fantastic. It's 75 BFL, 25 Masham, I believe. And I had 45 grams left, and so it's gonna be plenty to be the contrast color for this hat. So I'm, in case you can't tell, having a bit of a pink and gray moment. And yeah, another pink and gray. It's more of an oatmeal than a gray, but I'm really, really loving the contrast and how it's working up. So yeah, I'll probably get this done today or tomorrow, definitely in time for the challenge. And actually, I also have here what I think is going to be another one. So I totally just went stash diving yesterday morning for cast on and just played around. I've got a big Tupperware bin that sits underneath this antique love seat that I have. And so I just went stash diving. And one of the things that I came up with is this yarn. Now, this is from West Coast Yarn Co. This is Rachel. She's in Victoria and BC, which is still in Canada, but it's in the most beautiful part of Canada. And this is on her fingering weight base, and it's called Dried Bouquet. And I love this yarn. Just that soft, like oyster gray with the blips of like red, like burgundy, purple, gold. It's so stunning. And so this is a scrap from my So Faded sweater that I did a while back. And here, that gives you a good view of some of the different speckles. And I love Rachel, and I love her fingering weight and her DK weight base. It just is, it's so soft. It's an 85-15 superwash merino to nylon content. It's a 4-ply. It's so strong. It's so squishy. I love it. Another yarn I love is this is the Rowan Mohair Silk, whatever their Mohair Silk is called. And this is in the colorway Pearl. And this colorway and Rowan Mohair, I'll only knit to mass market mohairs, either Knitting for Olive or Rowan. And depending on the colorway, and this is for both, all mohairs, depending on the colorway and how much it's processed, I find changes how soft it is. And this is just the softest. And this colorway is like my favorite. It's that pearl oyster color. So I just thought having those two together would just be so good. And so I'm going to do that for my contrast color. Fingering and lace kind of makes a DK weight because of the fluff, but I'll fudge it to be a mohair. It's fine. I've got a bigger head, so I'll just knit the medium size. But I might be a little bit short on the mohair. So I also have like 15 grams. I've got 13 grams of the mohair. I've also got 13 grams of this Dandelion Lace by Lily and Pine, which is a Surrey Alpaca mohair. And so what I'm going to do for this is either, and you can let me know what you think in the comments, because I probably won't cast it on until well after this is posted, maybe a day or two after this is posted. I might hold those two together for the brim liner, or I might just hold this double for the brim liner. Knit the brim liner and then do this for the contrast color, or the main color, I guess. There we go. And then this as the contrast color. And this is Erin from Lily and Pine. This is Lily and Pine in Erin's Blue is the colorway, and this is her Elm Sport. So in the other one that I showed you, this is her Birch Sport, and her Birch Sport is 100% superwash merino. Her Elm Sport is 100% BFL non-superwash, and it's a little bit more prickly, but I love this base. I love it so much. It is so much spring. It has so much squish. It's amazing. The colors that she ends up dyeing on it are a little bit more muted, but I love it. You can sometimes see a little bit of like the natural coloring. I don't know if that shows up or not, but the natural coloring of the fiber coming through, a little bit of brown, a little bit of gray. And actually, a really good example is I do have one skein of Truly Outrageous on the Elm Sport, which is the BFL. So I've got BFL here and the merino here, and you can see just how that differs in the dye process. So anyways, let me know what you think. Hold this double or along with the fingering weight. I'm gonna play around and try it out and see how it goes. And I'm just so excited for this combination. I think it's gonna be glorious. So yeah, those are my whips for right now, and I'm gonna go to the chiropractor. And hi, I'm back. I had a lovely chiropractor appointment. Feel nice and adjusted. It I love my chiropractor. She's also a crocheter. So that was fun. So let's hop right into the fail of the week. And this is a sweater that I actually made 2 years ago, and it's the Rocket Tee. And I'm going to show you the back to start with. So you can see here it's striped between a fingering weight, that's the gray, and that is Lily & Pine Rose Sock, which we'll talk about the rose sock in a minute. So Lily & Pine Rose Sock in Sand Dollar, just a nice basic kind of light gray. And then the blue is a nicely dyed Mohair, and that was just something that I got on sale at Stash. And so yeah, that's my Rocket Tee. But the neckline called for an I-cord bind off. And so did the bottom hem. I didn't do it on the bottom hem because I didn't like the way it kind of flared out. And so this week I tried ripping it out and redoing it with a ribbed hem or a ribbed neckline. It's bad. It's really bad. I clearly did not pick up enough stitches, and it's horrendous. At this point, I don't even know if I want to fix it. Maybe I can try the I-cord again, picking up a bit fewer stitches than I did before. I tried going for like the Andrea Mowry ratio of like 5 out of every 7 stitches, but clearly I messed something up. And like when I talk about 5 for every 7, that's just along here. That's not along the back. Along the back, because it's stitch to stitch ratio, I did 1 for 1. And like the back of the neckline looks great, but the front's a hot mess. I don't know. It's gonna go into a drawer. I'm probably not gonna touch it. I haven't worn it. I made it 2 years ago and I've never worn it. So you know what? It's a fail, but it's okay. You can't win them all. But if anyone has suggestions for things for me to try out or wants to come over and just do it for me, that'd be great. Okay, so we have been through finished objects, whips, the fail of the week. I hope the lighting hasn't changed too much on my phone. It looks okay. Feels a little dark in the room, but we'll do our best. Because we are going to go into what I'm going to cast on next. Because I like to start swatching when I'm in the process of like the sleeves of the project that I'm working on finishing. So, and the body for that cardigan is going to go so quickly. It's like maybe 150 grams of wool that I have to work through. And it's DK weight, so that'll happen easily within the week. So I want to start swatching. And there are 2 potential projects. And I like to kind of flip-flop between fingering weight and something a little bit heavier, so either worsted or DK. I've really been enjoying working on DK lately, and my 2 options, and I'll put the pictures of them up on the screen because I'm going to try and edit this week. And I'm either going to do the Tolsta Tee by Creabea, or I'm going to go ahead and do the Soho Tank by Kadri, I think. If that's wrong, I'm so sorry. I will include the information. So for the Tolsta Tank, here is what I have. I bought some more of the Rowan Cotton Cashmere. So you can see that right there. And you can also see that it's because it was on sale. And so I was buying the green for my ranunculus, and I saw this in the sale bin. It's like, oh, that's a gorgeous smoky purple. Here's the YouTuber saying, oh, it's getting blown out. And that is pretty blown out. But if I hold it back here, it's a little bit truer. It's a little darker. Oh, that's good. So this is, cotton cashmere, which is I think it's about a DK weight. It's 85% cotton, 15% cashmere, as I mentioned with the ranunculus. It's 50 gram balls, and in the 50 gram ball, you get 200 or 125 meters or 137 yards. So I feel like it's pretty bang on for DK weight. And yeah, it doesn't say in here. It says it should be used on a US 6. So like that's DK weight to me. So I'm excited to try this out because I have this smoky purple and I really want to do stripes, and like not like stripes like my coloring book tee, but I want to do more of like a Breton stripe. So I'm not going to start the stripes right up here on the raglan, but like, yeah, like right there on the raglan. So like maybe one stripe before you split for sleeves, maybe two. And I'm going to do the stripes in this beautiful ecru color. And so I think the two of them are going to go quite nicely together. And so that's something that's a little heavier weight, and I'm excited to cast that on. And I think that'll get good wear over the summer, but it'll be nice to wear now too. So that's what I might do for the Tolsta. And you know what? I might swatch for both of them because they'll both be quick projects. And then the Soho tank, I have some Berroco Remix. And so this is a worsted weight, and I really like this one. It's a nice dark charcoal, and can we get this in focus too? So it's a nice dark charcoal, but those little flecks of white are just so yummy. And Berroco Remix, I've heard really good things, so I'm excited to try out this yarn. It's similar construction, honestly, to the Rowan. It's kind of plied together in an interesting way. That is not going to show up, Megan. There you go. Plied together in an interesting way, and it's a really good blend. It's 30% nylon, 27% cotton, 24% acrylic, 10% silk, and 9% linen. So it's a little bit of a dog's breakfast, a little bit of everything, but I've heard it's really nice to work with and really nice to wear. So I think that would lend a lot of drape to the Soho tank, and I think it would just be really comfy, but still lightweight. So we'll see what I end up doing. I'll probably, like I said, swatch for both. Tolsta tank is just stock net in the round, and the Soho is actually garter in the round. So we'll play with that and see what I end up going with. So those are my immediate plans. And then I also wanted to share with you some other projects that I want to be doing over the next few months. So we have a few months more of summer knitting, but of course, like I know myself, by the time August rolls around, I'm just gonna be really excited for fall, and I'll probably end up casting on like a worsted weight wool sweater. So really not a ton of summer knitting left. So a few weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, I made a list of the different summer knitting dreams. And actually, I think I'm gonna get almost everything crossed off. So number one that I listed on there, because I was just, all of these ideas were floating around in my head, and I just like to write things down, just organize it. I don't use Ravelry a ton, to keep track of my projects, but I will write them down in a notebook if I remember. Sometimes I don't. It's fine. So here were my summer knitting dreams. So first was the coloring book tee. Check, that's done. Next was the oolong tank, and this is a pattern also by Amy Scher, and I think it's beautiful, but I'm not wild about how chunky this is. It feels like more of a vest fit than a tank top fit. So I'm going to put that in an archive, and I'm going to keep that idea for next summer. And by then maybe I'll have a bit more experience knitting tank tops and be a little bit more comfortable with kind of editing that shoulder band thickness. And I'm pretty sure maybe it's bottom up. I don't think it would be too difficult, but I just don't want to take that on right now. That's a little bit too much mental power for me, for what I need for my knitting. So third was the ranunculus. Check. Fourth is the Tolsta tee. So we just heard about that. And then next is the Salty Air tee. So this pattern by Samantha Guérin came across all of our feeds last summer, and it is fabulous. It has the most beautiful lace yoke, and it's just absolutely stunning. So I'm really excited to knit that. I've seen a lot of them coming across my feed, and a lot of people who started them last summer, or like kind of same thing as me, saw it last summer, and then it was kind of on the first thing of their docket for this like spring summer knits. So I've got two options of yarn that I'm kind of think would be a good fit for that. So these are both the Crux Fibers silk, alpaca, and linen blend, same as what I made my coloring book tee out of. And this navy blue is called Blue Ribbon, and this green is called Wilderness. I've got 3 skeins of each, I'm pretty sure, which I will not need. I think I'm probably gonna be able to get this out of 1 and a bit skeins of each. And I'm hoping so, because then I can use the other skein and a bit, or 2 full skeins, to make another project. But it takes what it takes. You know, I don't want something that's super negative ease, not for a summer garment. And well, I haven't tried knitting much of anything that's like really negative ease, but yeah, so we'll see. I'm leaning more towards the green, but I might end up going for the blue as well. I think either is gonna give a really nice contrast. I do really well with nicely deeply saturated, or like just gem tones. So I'm excited to try those out for the Salty RT. So that's gonna be coming up, or coming down the pipe. Then I listed the Soho tank with the Berroco remix, and then a cardigan for Isla, which is the Dahlia cardigan that I'm working on. And then there's 2 other things that I wouldn't mind working on this summer. And the first is the shore tee. I don't remember who posted about it on Instagram. Sorry, my stool keeps shifting a little bit. I don't remember who kept posting about it on Instagram, but it showed up on my feed as like a good, like something that somebody was interested in knitting this year. And I saw it, and I just fell in love with the delicate lace. I'll put a picture here. I just fell in love with the delicate lace and the fit and the neckline. It spoke elegance and grace, and something that I can easily wear to school, something that I can easily dress up, or something that I could wear super casually with a pair of shorts. And so I haven't dug too much into the pattern yet, but I'm excited by the prospect of it. But I just don't necessarily want to work on it quite yet. I think, yeah, I'm just gonna do like a potato chippy pattern, like just something super duper simple. And then I think I'll go back in and tackle some lace. And what I have for this pattern is the Berocco Remix Light. So this is same blend as the other one, but it's categorized as a 3 light, which I think is like a DK. It feels a lot more like sport weight. There we go. Feels a lot more sport weight to me. I can compare that to the Crux Fibers. It's like, it's definitely not a fingering weight, but it's pretty close. It's like, yeah, sport, because our meterage on this guy is 100 grams and 432 yards. So I know that fits like smack dab into fingering weight material, but I think it'll knit up at more of like a sport weight gauge. You gotta swatch. You gotta swatch to figure that out. So it's looking really, really similar to my sweater, but my sweater is definitely more purple, and this is definitely more like plummy, purpley red. So I think it would be so elegant and so graceful. And once again, my knitting store had this on sale. So instead of like the $16.49, it was $9.87. So how can you pass that up? So I picked this up, and then the short tee popped into my consciousness, and I'm excited with the prospect of trying it out. All right, shorty. Oh, the last thing. I made notes for this podcast, which is a wise choice. The last thing that is in my summer knitting dreams is the corn cardigan. Once again, by the Crea Bea. I've followed her podcast forever and ever and ever. And like since she started, and I was excited to see her kind of like foray into designing, and because I was really loving the ideas that she came up with. And the corn cardigan, at first it didn't pique my interest much, but then I was seeing the testers and seeing things come up, and I was like, actually that could be really practical garment. And I'm really enjoying having cardigans in my wardrobe, because I find with what I do for work, I love wearing my hand knits because it's kind of cool in the school in the morning, but then I really like being able to take it off and still have something work appropriate underneath. So having a cardigan is just so accessible, and I can wear it open and have a little bit more airflow. And then the corn cardigan, which I will have posted a picture here. Gosh, I have high expectations of my later self. So the corn cardigan, I think, will be really nice and elegant for that. And then I have this, and I told you we were going to hear more about West Coast Yarn Coast. This is Rachel, and she is delightful. And she dyed this up for me. It was, the colorway is technically frozen kelp. I had her change it just a little bit. The fingering weight base dyed up a little bit more, like it had some more bluey undertones. And when I mean bluey, it's like this steelish blue. That might not be coming across. But the fingering weight had more than the DK weight. And so I said, would you dye me 3 with more, aiming towards more of the blue? She said, oh my gosh, of course, I'll do what I can, because like there technically isn't any blue dye in this. I don't know how the magic of yarn dyeing works, but she does. And she said, I'll do my best. And I'm so happy with how it turned out. We were going to do like sister sweaters, but then we were going to do the Ochre and Moss by Andrea Mowry. And then we both just were like, no, that's not happening. So I have 3 skeins of DK weight, and that's not quite enough to do a sweater. And it's variegated, and it's just, it's nicely variegated though. Like you get some pops of like this bright orange, and then you get this steely blue, and then there's some spots with like quite a bit of green, and it's just stunning. And so yeah, it's just been sitting in my stash waiting for the right project. And I think a corn cardigan in this would be really nice. We'll see though. So that is my knitting plans for the summer, in case you were wondering. And I have to flip back to my notes for the episode. But I think there's only a few more things that I want to go over. So first of all, at the very end, I'm going to have some footage of Jeffrey and I on the long weekend. We went to Writing on Stone National Park. Nope, not a national park, provincial park. And it's about an hour and a half away from where we live. And we went to Writing on Stone National Provincial Park. And it's a UNESCO heritage site because there are, the sandstone there is very, very soft. And so it's been very easy to carve into. And there are hundreds of year old petroglyphs that were inscribed by the indigenous peoples of the area, which is the various collections that create the Blackfoot Confederacy. And so I live on Blackfoot territory, and I'm so glad to be able to share in this beautiful, beautiful landscape. And so I just wanted to share a little bit of the footage that we had. I would strongly recommend it. There was a little 5-kilometer hike that we ended up doing. It was pretty, like, accessible isn't the right word, but it was very much like a pretty casual walk. There was a little bit of elevation here, a little bit of elevation there, but it was rather comfortable, and the day was gorgeous. We did that on Victoria Day. We really like doing things that honor the Indigenous history of the area. On Victoria Day last year, we went to Head Smashed In Buffalo Jump. I don't know what we're going to do next year, but I'm excited by the prospect. So I'll share a little bit of that footage at the end. So when that pops up, that's what that's about. And then the only other thing I want to share is acquisitions. So if you're not interested in watching acquisitions, you by all means do not have to. But yeah, last weekend, Jeffrey had to go up to Calgary to get his, he does triathlons and marathons. He's a superhuman. And he had to go up, sorry for the crinkle, he had to go up to get his tri-bike fitted because he just bought a used tri-bike. And so the person that he bought it from was a little bit taller than him, so he just got it fitted to his body. And a few days before we were gonna go, we went on Saturday. Rachel from West Coast Yarn Co. and Melissa, no, not Melissa, Marissa, I don't know where that came from. Marissa, I know your name, I promise, of formerly Rocky Mountain Yarn Co., but now of, see if I can do this, yeah, Fantasy Fibers Yarn Co. There we go. These two lovely ladies, Marissa lives in Calgary, but Rachel does not. And they're like knitting BFFs or yarn BFFs. They started dyeing yarn together. Their story is super cute. And so Rachel was in Calgary, and I wasn't interested in going up in Calgary during the week, but she flew out on Saturday and flew out later in the afternoon. And so we actually got to have a bit of a visit. And so we went to Little Bow Fiber Company, which is in the cutest little shop. It's delightful. It's in Marta Loop, and we had a really great visit. And during that visit, I went ahead and got 3 skeins of yarn total. I was so drawn to this, and this is Woolfolk, and that's really showing you like the undertones, but it's quite dark. So this is Woolfolk Far, and Woolfolk is a beautiful yarn company, very expensive because of how soft their yarn is. Now I have used their yarn to make a sweater because I got it on a massive sale, and that sweater has felted terribly, and it breaks my heart because I love the sweater and it's so comfy, it's so cozy. I still wear it, but I don't wear it to work. I don't wear it out because it kind of just looks like a mess. And so I saw this, and she had a sample of this yarn knit up in the C-Train, knit up in the C-Train hat. And you'll see like the construction of it is, it's a braided construction, but it's just so soft and so luscious. And I always make hats for my brother and sister-in-law and niece and nephew, and they love them. And my brother Trevor in particular really loves them, and he's all about dark purples and blacks and stuff like that. So I saw this like so dark purple that it's almost black. I was like, I'm gonna make that for him. And then I saw this so romantic, barely like mauvey purple pink. So it's romantic pink. I was like, I'm gonna make that into a C-Train hat for myself because it was just so soft. And I like to call it a selfish knitter, but it's not selfish. It's just I like to knit for myself. So I got both of those. And then I also got a skein of Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair. This is in the marzipan colorway. And so the shop owner, and I can't remember her name off the top of my head. I want to say Michelle. I'm sorry if that's totally wrong. But she's trying to kind of amp up her Knitting for Olive selection. But she did have this color, and I really wanted to see what this color was going to look like in comparison to some of my other yarns. And so I bought it. And if I need more, I'll buy more because Knitting for Olive is mass manufactured yarn, but still pretty ethical. And so their dye lots are pretty reliable. So I've got that because I want to do a lento with, there are a few yarn dyers that I just love. And Lillian Pine, who I've already mentioned in like 2/3 of this podcast, is one of them. And this colorway is so stunning. It is called Pink Champagne, and this is on her Rose Sock, which is her Merino Cashmere Nylon 80-10-10 blend, which I am in love with. And just like, look at those speckles. So I went up to Calgary a few weeks ago for a yarn festival, and I bought this there, and I bought 2 skeins. And because I could do a long sleeved ranunculus, but I think I want to do a lento. And so that means I needed a mohair or alpaca to match. And so I think that'll be a pretty good match. You know, the swatch will tell, but I think it's gonna be pretty good. So I'm really excited about that. I'm glad that it works well together. I think this marzipan colorway is really similar to like the neutral base of the rose sock that Erin dyes on. And so, yeah, that's why I got that. So those are acquisitions. This was not an acquisition. This was an acquisition from a few weeks ago, but I just wanted to show you that. This yarn will be coming back because I also bought 2 skeins of DK and I might be buying more DK because I have plans. So one more big acquisition, and this was not from last week. This is from a few weeks ago, but I really want to feature it, is from West Coast Yarn. And so she just did a big update based on 2 of her primary colorways that she's done. Well, she did it a few years ago and it's kind of come back a few times. And it's called her Vintage Bride and Vintage Groom. And so I already had this in stash, and I think I'm going to do a Stria cardigan with this. So this is like your barely pink, and this is your barely, like she calls it like a navy black, not a navy blue, but a navy black. And so like this is like a faded wedding dress and this is a faded suit. And it gives me goosebumps. I just think it's gorgeous. And so I'm actually gonna do, did I say Stria cardigan? I'm gonna do a birch pullover, but I'm gonna do it with stripes. I just think this is the perfect stripe combo. But she did a collection and she called it the Wedding Party Collection. And I couldn't resist. And so I bought a bunch more. And so I bought the whole collection. And so you've got your vintage bride and vintage groom. Once again, West Coast Yarn Co. Go and check her out. She's so good. You've got your vintage bride and vintage groom. But then you've also got Flower Girl, which has all these funky speckles. I love her speckles. I love them so much. And then you've also got your Something Blue. And then last but not least, you can see my sun's starting to go here. You've got your Bouquet Toss. So it's your like end of the night tired flower bouquet. And it's just so sultry. It's so yummy. And you know, I've been having a hard time lately, and so I did a little bit of shopping therapy, but that's okay. I don't have any other yarn purchases that I need to be making on the horizon, and I've been pretty good at not buying indie dyed yarn, except for Rachel's. So I love that all of these also contrast so well together, and so I think some kind of color work. I think it would be really, really yummy. But we will see. So those are my acquisitions. Just throw them on the couch. Those are my acquisitions and my summer knitting plans and everything I've been working on. And oh my gosh, this episode is probably an hour and a half long. If you want to stay for a little bit longer and just have some peace and quiet and maybe think about the Indigenous territories that you may or may not live on, then see mine and Jeffrey's kind of explorations from the Writing on Stone Provincial Park in southern Alberta. It's pretty gorgeous. So that is all for today. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend and treat those around you really well. And if you've got a mom, say hi to her. And this has been my Hey Mom Knitting podcast, and I've loved catching you all up. And I miss you, Mom. And I hope you enjoy knowing how much joy this creativity brings me. So have a wonderful week, everybody, and I will see you next time. Bye.